You are now listening to Mark's Unexplained World by Mark the Medium. Available on Apple Podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Prime, Podbean and most other podcast platforms. Tonight's episode is about the haunting of Wizard Cliff. So it's over to you now, Mark, for this week's spooky episode.
The Haunting of the Wizard Cliff is a popular ghost story about an incident that is said to have occurred in Middleway, West Virginia in the 1770s and is part of the oral history of the area, with it being called by the Reverend Alfred E. Smith, who was the editor-in-chief of the Catholic Review and secretary to Cardinal Gibbons, the truest ghost story ever told. A summary of the original story, according to the president of the Middleway Conservancy, Mr. Jesse Norris, claims that the hauntings began when a mysterious stranger, along with his horse, arrived at the home of Adam Livingston, asking if he could stay the night during a terrible storm, with it also transpiring that the stranger and his horse were exhausted, so much so that they found they couldn't make it to their final destination. The Livingston family, being the good Samaritans that they were, allowed the stranger to spend the night in their home. However, when, due to some possible illness, and remembering, of course, that this was in the 1770s, at a time when an infected graze could be a potential death sentence, when it became clear that this stranger would not survive until the morning, he then requested a Catholic priest to administer his last rites. However, as the area was mostly devoid of any Catholics, let alone a priest, ultimately the stranger died of his illness and was buried nearby without the benefits of a Catholic service. And if you do listen, or read any even, ghost stories, you have probably already gathered where this tale is going, but I'll continue anyway. According to some accounts, the moment the stranger died, every candle in the room was snuffed and had its wick mysteriously cut, followed by the first recorded instance of an eerie clipping phenomena, which would later give the haunting its name. Greetings, Unexplainers. Thank you for tuning in once again and listening to this phantom extravagantic episode of Mark's Unexplained World. My name is Mark Hughes. I am a medium, a ufologist, a true crime buff, and a man with a very dark and disturbed sense of humour who realises that when I'm tempted to fight fire with fire, I always remember first that the fire department usually uses water. But just to give you a better idea of who I am and what I do, every week, usually on a Tuesday night, occasionally on a Wednesday or later, allowing for bank holidays and busy weekends, I do a podcast on the many wide and various subjects that fall under the Unexplained banner. These include ufology, hauntings, disasters, and all sorts of other paranormal phenomena, including true crime, unsolved crime, serial killers, and the darker side of some past celebrities and the occasional missing person that often goes unnoticed. So if you are listening to this show on YouTube, please give us a review or an opinion of the episode subject that I can reply to. A thumbs up, listen to my channel, and hit that notification bell. Or if you are listening on any of the other podcast platforms, again, give us a like and a follow. And if you do get a few minutes free, perhaps you might like to check out some of my social media groups and pages, including Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, which are filled daily with all sorts of unexplained and crime stuff. I'll put the links to some of my socials in the description. In this episode, I'm going to tell you about the supernatural occurrences surrounding the haunting of Wizard Cliff, and this week's necessary disclaimer. This tale is a pretty easy-going ghost story with no real brown trouser moments, so just sit back and enjoy, but as with all my shows, you listen at your own discretion, remembering that all the opinions and comments are strictly my own, but the facts of the case still remain. I also apologise if I pronounce anything incorrectly. My English, although it is my first and only language, it still makes me wonder that if supermarkets are lowering prices every day, why yet isn't anything in the store free? But anyway, let's get back to the story. Middleway is a census-designated place, or otherwise known as a CDP, which is a closely settled, unincorporated community that is locally recognised and identified by its name. With it being located in Jefferson County, West Virginia, United States, in the lower Shenandoah Valley, and as of the 2020 census, its population was just 482. On the 15th of January, back in 1786, the Virginia General Assembly passed an act establishing the town of Smithfield, which was owned by William Smith and John Smith II. The post office was established in the town in 1806, and since there was already another town called Smithfield in the area, a different name was needed to avoid confusion. But because Smithfield had become a centre of commerce between several other towns nearby, the post office became known as Middleway, and that name has remained ever since. Middleway still remains a small village and retains many of its historic buildings, with the Middleway Historic District being added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1980. The town has also been known as Wizard Clip, or simply just Clip, and the townspeople are sometimes known as Clippers, which is a result of the legend regarding the haunting of Wizard Clip. The hauntings of Wizard Clip reportedly began back in the late 1700s, when a mysterious stranger arrived at the home of Adam Livingston, who, along with his wife and their 8 children, were a successful farming family. But this mysterious stranger didn't come alone, as he not only brought his horse, he also brought with him a terrible storm. When the stranger got to the doorstep and knocked on the door of the Livingston home, he asked if he could stay the night, as he and his horse were exhausted and couldn't make it to their final destination. So the Livingston family, being pretty kind, decent people, allowed the rain-sodden stranger to spend the night in their home. However, things suddenly, and rather unexpectedly I feel, took a dark turn when, for whatever reason, it soon became apparent that the stranger, who was very sick and would not survive the night, so he then requested that Adam Livingston find a priest to administer his last rites. However, the Livingstons point-blank refused this request, because not only were they staunch Lutheran family, but at the time Middleway, which was then known as Smithfield, was a Protestant town, and the nearest Roman Catholic priest was more than a day's journey away. On a quick interesting side note here, a Lutheran is a member of a major branch of Protestant Christianity that traces its beliefs and practices back to the teachings of Martin Luther King, who was the 16th century reformer. Lutheranism emphasises the salvation by faith alone, the authority of Scripture, and the significance of the sacraments, and it is characterised by adherence to the Bible and the ecumenical creeds, with its doctrine summarised in the Book of Concord. Lutheranism is the second largest Protestant denomination following the Baptist Church. I do feel it's important to point out here that there are various theories as to why Adam Livingstone did or did not go looking for a Catholic priest, with some reports saying that he refused because the storm was too dangerous, and others saying that he did try to find a priest but couldn't locate one. However, whatever the argument of what Adam did or didn't do, the stranger didn't make it through the night anyway and died shortly after inside their home. According to some accounts, it is said that the moment the stranger died, every candle in the room was snuffed out and had its wick mysteriously cut, with later suggestions that this may be the first recorded instance of the eerie clipping phenomena, which would later give the haunting its name of the Wizard Clip. And according to the president of the Middleway Conservancy, a Mr. Jesse Norris, he said of the incident at the time that, and I quote, "The name Wizard Clip would have come from a wizard or a male witch, and the clipping is coming from the poltergeist or ghost making a lot of clipping sounds." Jesse Norris continues, and again I quote, "Pretty much as soon as the gentleman passes away, things start to go a little wry." The next morning, the Livingstone family decided to bury the stranger in an unconsecrated grave, but that is where their troubles were only just beginning, because in the days that followed, the Livingstones were plagued by an unrelenting barrage of mysterious sounds of banging, the gallop of unseen horses, and the relentless snipping of shears, along with a multiple of other strange occurrences within their home that they could neither explain or believe was happening. After this first short break, in part 2 we will look at the continued haunting of the Wizard Clip and how it affected the family.
HAPRA advert, Ghost Planet Network, broadcasting from the other side. Ready to tune in to terror? The Ghost Planet Network is your new home for original paranormal content, streaming straight from beyond the veil. We've got it all: spine-tingling stories, chilling documentaries, and real paranormal investigations from the world's most haunted hotspots. Perfect for believers, skeptics, and anyone who loves a good scare. Join the paranormal TV revolution. Get unlimited access for just £12 per year. Tune in now. Email us at neil.hapra@gmail.com to sign up. That is neil.haprc@gmail.com.
So, how exactly did the Wizard Clip haunt the Livingstone household? Well, the whispering of unfamiliar voices would be heard through the home. Dishes, along with other fragile items, would shatter or fall off shelves on their own. Stones, along with a variety of other items, would roll across the floor. Firewood would suddenly fly through the air, again inside the home. Loud sounds of horses galloping would suddenly overwhelm the house. The heads of ducks and geese would simply fall off as if they'd been cut, and pieces of fabric brought into the home would either be shredded or cut up. One phenomenon that kept occurring throughout the Livingstone home was the constant noise of clipping sounds in their ears, which would incessantly keep the family awake at night. But probably the most unusual phenomena was when, for the want of a better word, poltergeist would decide to cut up nearly every piece of clothing or fabric within the house, which included slashes appearing in shirts, pants, boots, harnesses, sheets, curtains, and even riding gear. And while some of the pieces were sliced up into very small fragments, many fabrics had the specific shape of a crescent moon cut into them, with this occurrence either happening while one of the Livingstons was still wearing the garment, or when the clothing and linens were stored in a locked trunk. And again, according to the president of Middleway Conservancy, Mr. Jesse Norris, he said of the phenomena, and I quote, "They would be hanging up clothes, go to hang up the next blanket or garment, and turn back round to find that the previous one had crescent moons cut out of it." These impending crescent cuts were also accompanied again by the constant faint clipping noises, which sounded as though they were coming from a pair of phantom shears that were often heard throughout the home, with this incessant cutting of clothes going on for several years. In fact, it got to the point where the whole area knew the nightmare of what the Livingston farm was experiencing, which then led to the locals to dub the ghost as the Wizard Clip, choosing the term wizard to refer to the cult symbol of the crescent moon, with Jesse Norris again saying of the name, and I quote, "The moon symbol became very big in Middleway because of the Wizard Clip lore." Word of the Livingstons' poltergeist spread very quickly, drawing in many curious visitors to their home, and according to one account, a woman who had carefully tucked a silk handkerchief into her pocket after visiting the house found that it was mysteriously shredded with crescent moon shapes, which, according to the locals anyway, was a chilling sign that the strange forces at work were not confined to the Livingston home. Other things that befell the Livingston family after burying the body of the stranger without a proper service or headstone, and as well as the incessant clipping noises, was that the cows started to become very ill and died. Their barn burned down to the ground, unfortunately killing most of their remaining livestock, and, as well as losing a lot of their livelihood, they were not sleeping, which meant that they were not doing very well mentally either. So eventually, and being a devout Lutheran, the father of the house, Adam Livingston, saw these as bad omens, and so decided to seek some help from nearby ministers to perform some sort of spiritual house clearing. On an interesting side note here, a spiritual house cleaning, or cleansing even, is a practice that goes beyond physical tidying in order to clear out any negative energies and create a positive environment. It involves techniques such as smudging with herbs, sound clearing with instruments, using salt to absorb negativity, placing crystals for positive energy, and decluttering physical items, with the ultimate goal being to create a space that supports emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. Spiritual house cleaning can be performed by various individuals, including spiritualists and psychics, or if you are comfortable with the process, you can perform spiritual house cleaning yourself. But if we go deeper into the practice, or ritual even, you can also get rid of any negative spirits in your home. But if you are going to do this, you should consider the following methods.
Number 1. Sage cleansing.
Use sage to clear any negative energies or spirits from your space.
Number 2. Protective crystals.
Place protective crystals like black tourmaline or blue kyanite in high traffic areas or portals to push away the negative energy.
Number 3. Spiritual boundaries.
Set up clear boundaries for spirits to visit your home and identify which spirits are allowed.
Number 4. Negotiation.
If you can communicate with the spirit, try negotiating for them to leave your home peacefully.
Number 5. Holy water.
Use holy water to cleanse the space or area to help remove the negative energy.
Number 6. Smudging.
Smudge your space with sage to remove negative energy and unwanted spirits.
Number 7. Feng Shui?
Apply Feng Shui principles, which is an ancient Chinese practice that focuses on harmonising individuals with their environment to promote well-being and balance, to create a harmonious and inviting space.
And finally, number 8, white candle clearing.
Light white candles and use them to clear negative energy from your home. These methods can help you in creating a more positive and peaceful environment for your home. However, if you are unsure about the process, it is always best to consult with a professional or spiritual guide for any other help or recommendations. Before I go back into the haunting of Wizard Clip, I just want to take a quick look at the question of what exactly is a ghost? Well, according to folklore, a ghost is the soul or spirit even of a dead person or a non-human animal that is believed by some people to be able to appear to the living. And with the descriptions of ghost in ghost lore varying widely, they could be anything from an invisible presence to a translucent or barely visible wispy shape to a realistic lifelike form. The deliberate attempt to contact the spirit of a deceased person is known as necromancy, or in spiritism it is known as a seance, and other terms that are associated with the name of ghost are apparition, phantom, poltergeist, spectre, spirit, spook, wraith, demon and ghoul. The English word of ghost comes from the Old English word of gast, meaning breath, spirit or soul, which can be traced back to the reconstructed common ancestor of the Germanic languages, Proto-Germanic word geistas, which again means spirit or ghost. The belief in the existence of an afterlife, as well as manifestations of the spirit of the dead, is very widespread and dates back to animism or ancestor worship in pre-literature cultures, with certain religious practices like funeral rites, exorcisms and some practices of spiritualism and ritual magic being specifically designed to rest the spirits of the dead. Ghosts are generally described as a solitary human-like essence, though at the same time stories of ghostly armies and the ghosts of animals other than human have also been reported and are believed to haunt particular locations, objects or even people they were once associated with in life. The overwhelming consensus of science says that there is no proof that ghosts even exist, and that ghost hunting itself has been classified as nothing more than a pseudoscience. And despite centuries of investigations, there is no scientific evidence that any location is inhabited by the spirits of the dead, again according to science. Historically, there are certain toxic and psychoactive plants, such as Datura or Hysycamus, or is it, how's that? Hysycamus. We'll go with that one. Whose use has long been associated with necromancy and the underworld, that have been shown to contain anticholinergic compounds that are pharmacologically linked to dementia, especially DLB, as well as historical patterns of neurodegeneration. On just a quick, short and interesting side note here, DLB, which is otherwise known as dementia with Lewy bodies, is a type of dementia characterised by changes in sleep, behaviour, cognition, movement and regulation of automatic bodily functions. And recent research has indicated that ghost sightings may be related to degenerative brain diseases such as Alzheimer's. And not only that, but, and again according to science, so don't swear at me, it is also claimed that some common prescription medications and over-the-counter drugs such as sleeping aids may also in rare instances cause ghost-like hallucinations, particularly zolpidem and diphenhydramine, I think that's right, with older reports even linking carbon monoxide poisoning to ghost-like hallucinations. I personally don't take drugs, I'm not an alcoholic, I'm not one for indoor plants, or have I ever breathed in any carbon monoxide, so the reason for me experiencing and witnessing all the weird shit that I have seen over the years since I was 8 years old itself remains a mystery. After this second short break in part 3, we go back to the Wizard Clip haunting and see what happens when Adam Livingston seeks help to rid his home of the mischievous spirit.
Fright Nights was established in 1999 as the first company in the world to offer overnight ghost hunt experiences to the general public, pioneering paranormal events since the last century. Fright Nights operate at hundreds of the UK's most haunted and exclusive venues. All events have their own team of experienced paranormal investigators, mediums and psychics. They have a VIP members club for regular returning guests, offering loyalty discounts and exclusive invitation-only events. They can also host private events for your family and friends. You can contact them on 07852 998 628 or email them at office@frightnights.co.uk. Or take a look at their website at www.frightnights.co.uk, where you can see the many locations they investigate and learn about them and the opportunities they have available. Hundreds of ghost hunters join Fright Nights every month for the most thrilling ghost hunting experiences they'll never forget. If you haven't been on a ghost hunt before, then why not join them to see what it's all about? Why not visit their social media sites for up-to-date information on all the places they visit and to see what's coming up in the future? They look forward to seeing you all soon. Fright Nights Ghost Hunting Events. Remember, only the original will do.
After many years of daily hauntings and crescent-shaped moon doilies appearing around the home, the Livingston family started to crack and so decided to ask several Lutheran ministers to come to the house to try rid the farm of the spectral entity. However, this decision did not come to Adam Livingston through a very unorthodox manner. And again, according to the president of the Middleway Conservancy, Mr. Jesse Norris, he said of Adam's decision, and I quote, "The night before Adam travels to Shepherdston, he has this strange dream where he sees a man he's not familiar with and in unfamiliar clothing with a voice that says, 'This is the person who's going to bring you salvation, who is going to save you from this torture.'" So, in a somewhat desperate state, Adam Livingston, who, if you remember, was a staunch Lutheran, turns to what was for him an unlikely source, and that was the Roman Catholic priest in Shepherdstown named Father Dennis Cahill, who, although sceptical, reluctantly agrees to bless this home, especially after the local townspeople could also vouch for the bizarre and persistent disturbances they had all witnessed. I feel I should point out here that, according to some sources, when Adam Livingston first gets to the church, he finds that Father Dennis Cahill does in fact look like the gentleman from his dream, but I'll let you ponder over that one. Upon his arrival at the Livingston farm, Father Dennis Cahill heard the noise of the shears clipping in his ears, and then he witnessed stones, crockery and firewood flying around the home. Jesse Norris says of Father Cahill's visit to the farm, and I quote, "He is beside himself and decides to bless the home." And after the exorcism is completed, Jesse Norris continues, and again I quote, "Father Cahill calls it a win and finds a little pouch of money that he lost sitting at the stoop at the front door as he's leaving, so he considers it a good omen. He's done something right and he's able to leave the Livingston family." At first, Father Dennis Cahill's blessing appeared to have worked. The poltergeist activity had ceased, the crescent-shaped doilies had stopped, loud sounds of horses galloping had, galloped away, the constant snipping noises had disappeared, and a sense of calm had settled over the home. However, if you follow most poltergeist stories, you probably have a good idea as to what happens next, but just in case you don't, I'll tell you anyway. Before long, the poltergeist disturbances returned, only this time they were stronger than before, so the Livingstons then decided to seek the help from other nearby ministers, but this was all in vain, as none of them could rid the home of its tormenting spirit either, mainly because whenever they attempted to enter the house, they would get rained upon by rocks, which would block their way. So in a further attempt to understand the haunting, the family then invited conjurers, or mediums even, to conduct seances. However, unfortunately, their efforts also failed. Also, 2 priests from the nearby towns came to a Livingston farm and offered prayers on site, and when they did, the haunting stopped for a few days, but would then recommence and continue. Being determined to find a lasting solution for the Livingston family, Father Cahill reached out to the diocese in Baltimore, which dispatched another priest named Father Demetrius Galitzin, who was not only a priest, but he was also a former Russian nobleman who had travelled to the Americas to explore the New World, documenting his encounters and interviewing locals about supernatural occurrences. So, upon hearing upon the Livingstons' paranormal plight, Father Demetrius Galitzin then set out for the Livingston home, ready to confront the mischievous doily-making spirit that haunted the family and their farm. On an interesting side note here, an exorcism is the religious or spiritual practice of evicting demons or malevolent entities from a personal place that is believed to be possessed. The word exorcism itself is derived from the ancient Greek word exorkismos, which also refers to the practice of expelling evil spirits or demons from individuals or locations. The practice is rooted in various religious and cultural traditions, with methods varying widely. For instance, in Christianity, an exorcist, who is often a priest, uses prayers, rituals and various other religious symbols to command the entity to leave the affected person. The exorcist may also invoke the name of God, Jesus or angels during the process, believing that their authority enables them to cast out the demon. Exorcisms remains a fascinating and controversial topic, blending elements of spirituality, psychology and cultural narratives, and whether it is viewed through a religious lens or as a subject of entertainment, the practice continues to invoke strong emotions and discussions about the nature of good and evil in our world. According to our now good friend Jesse Norris, he said of Father Demetrius Galitzin's visit to the Livingston farm, and I quote, "What many people don't realise is that in order to do an exorcism of a spirit, you have to have permission from the Catholic Church, and it is quite an extensive process." So Father Demetrius Galitzin, once at the Livingston home, then takes notes for about 3 months until he essentially gets permission from the Catholic Church to do the exorcism. After what was described as an explosive exorcism, in which the house shook and rattled and pots and pans and cutlery flew everywhere, both Father Dennis Cahill and Father Demetrius Galitzin went to visit the stranger's grave. Remember him? The stranger's grave in order to finally read him his last rites. And from most accounts of the legend, the poltergeist activity finally ceased after this, and as a reward, and before he moved back to Pennsylvania, Adam Livingston donated more than 30 acres of his land to the Catholic Church in gratitude. It was said that soon after Father Galitzin's visit, the family began to hear what they described as a consoling voice from a mysterious presence that was said to have remained with them for many years. This voice first manifested itself as a bright light that awoke Mr. Livingston from his sleep, and then sounded like a clear, sweet voice that told him to arise, call his family together, and pray. And after doing so, the same voice then continued to instruct them in the Catholic faith in what was described as, and I quote,
"in the most simple yet eloquent manner."
This supernatural visitation was considered by the Livingston family to be the voice of a soul in purgatory, which then led to the family converting to the Catholic faith. The Reverend Dmitri Galitzin recalled the wizard clip experience in a letter where he said that after 3 months of visiting the Livingston home, and I quote, "I was soon converted to a full belief of them," in which I presume he means poltergeists and spirits. And located at the Priest Field Pastoral Retreat Centre in Kernersville, United States, is a monument dedicated to Adam Livingston, which I presume was for the generous donation of his land.
Thank you all for taking the time out to listen to this episode of Mark's Unexplained World. In our next episode, show number 175, we are going to be looking at what happened to Richard Chadek. Richard Chadek III was an 11-year-old boy who went missing in 1986 from a quiet suburb in Nebraska. His disappearance led to an extensive search operation, but he was later found dead 8 days later, confirming the worst-case scenario. The case remains one of Omaha's most infamous cold cases, and detectives are still looking for leads to solve it.
This show was written and researched by myself, Mark Hughes, proofread and edited by Linda Hughes. But yeah, it was me who pronounced all those names. The actors in this episode were Mark Hughes, Linda Hughes and Denise Poolar, with special thanks to Neil Packer and the staff at the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre in Hinckley, and of course a big thank you to everyone for listening. We never run out of we never run out of ideas here at the office for Mark's Unexplained World podcast. But if you do know of any other intriguing stories under the Unexplained banner, including ufology, hauntings, disasters, and any other sort of paranormal phenomena, as well as true crime, unsolved crime and missing people, just drop me a direct message and I'll see what I can do. I'll also include the name of the person who suggested the idea in the end credits of the podcast, if they're happy for me to do so, of course. And again, just to add, if you are listening to this show on YouTube, please give us a review and a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you are listening on any of the other podcast platforms, again, give us a like and a follow. I thank you in advance. Mark's Unexplained World, because there's more to the paranormal than meets the third eye. And remember, guys, keep it real, because being real is better than being perfect. No AI was used or harmed in the making of this or any other episode of Mark's Unexplained World. This show and all its contents are covered by basic copyright of Mark the Medium.